Well, hello everyone. My name is Mildred, and this week on today's live class, we're going to summarize everything we have seen in the pre-recorded videos about Flask, how to use Flask Jinja template, and then we'll look at SQL Alchemy and how to connect to our database. We'll do as much as we can before our time elapses. So as we have seen in the pre-recorded video, we use Flask as our framework for this course, and Flask is a Python framework that is based on the web server gateway interface and also Jinja2 Template engine. We are going to use Flask with MySQL database, and we will be using SQL Alchemy as the layer for connection, and we're going to discuss that in detail. For us to start using Flask, we have to have Python installed, which we have done in week 8, and we also have to have a virtual environment created. Now, it's always best to have a virtual environment because dependencies from different projects will vary, and if you install on your system, you can end up having conflicting dependencies. So you want to have a virtual environment for each project, and then you'll do your installation of your framework and everything within that environment. And so outside of the environment, you don't have the installation on your system, and you can have many projects running on the same system because they're on different environments. They have different libraries, different dependencies, and they don't clash. So you will start your Visual Studio Code as always. I always want to use terminal on Visual Studio Code so that we can run the same command regardless of your operating system. Most of the time it's exactly the same command we run, but if we have to use our terminal for Mac or PowerShell, then the commands begin to vary across Windows and MacBook and the Linux operating systems. So we'll use terminal here, and we'll use our basic command line commands that we have seen previously. I want to create a new directory, and I want to do this on my desktop. So let me say I want to go to my root directory for my system, and I want to cd into my desktop. So I'll change directory to desktop. It's always indicated by you seeing the name of the directory that you have moved into. I want to create a new directory, and this directory is just the folder that will hold my project. And for us to create a new directory, we use the command make directory mkdir and then the name. Let's say I want this to be as a class project. So I have a directory called class project, and I want to cd into the directory class project. Now I'm in that directory. I want to now create a virtual environment within this directory and then install Flask here. So for me to create a virtual environment, the command is Python 3 and then the m flag. I'll give a name to my virtual environment. We create a virtual environment using the venv, and then the name I want to give my virtual environment is .venv. You can give your virtual environment any name you want. This is just a convention. It's not required that .venv will be the name of your virtual environment. Okay, so when I do this, enter. If all is well, this is created, and I want to add that project folder here, and it's on my desktop and it's called class project. Now I have my class project added here. Let me remove what I'm not using here. I have this called class project, and we can see the .venv, which is my virtual environment. So all the dependencies, installations that I will do for this class project will be in this environment. Okay. For us to do anything, we need to activate the environment. Always make sure your environment is activated. Okay. So if I try to activate this environment, I might get an error, and I always need some kind of permissions, admin permissions. So I'll activate this using dot, a space, and another dot. So I'll say dot, dot. So without the first dot, let's just do it, and you see I'll have an error. Dot venv /bin/activate. And permission denied. When you get permission denied, put a dot before you do a dot, venv/bin/activate. Now, once it's activated, you should see the name of your virtual environment in bracket here, and then you know that this is activated, and you can start installing all of your dependencies. Now, we said before that pip is a package manager for Python, and we can use this to install packages. So we'll do pip install flask. When we install flask, we'll have some other things installed with flask, and when you read there, you see we have Jinja2 installed along with flask. We have click, we have blinker. There's just some markup save, some things installed. We are not going to use all of these in this course. This course will just point in the right direction, and you are required to do more readings on flask. When you see notices like this that your new release is available, just copy and run the code to update the package that you have and to upgrade this. Okay? Any questions so far?
Hello?
Yes.
Hello? Yeah, the question I want to ask in what's it called now? Is it the activation of the virtual environment? We use Python. Okay, if it were to be another project that we are doing with maybe Java or whatever, is it universal? It has to be that Python -m and all of that.
No, that's for Python. For other languages,
okay, it's for Python. Okay.
Yeah, these are Python codes.
That's what okay.
Yeah. Okay. So once we have So once we've done this, we have our virtual environment activated. We have Flask installed. If we go to bin, we'll see what we have installed. Flask, pip, we have Python 3. For those of you who just installed Python, you might have 3.12, and everything that you have installed, you always find them in the bin of your virtual environment. So now we are ready to start working. Always make sure that this environment is activated. Make sure you see the name of your virtual environment in brackets before all of this here. Let us create a file now in this directory, in our root directory here. We want to call this file app. I want to create a file here, and I'll call this app.py. I want to write all our code here. To start writing our code, we need to import the flags that we just installed, and we need to create a constructor. To import the flags, we'll say from flags. Take note of the capitalization, flags all lowercase, and we're importing flags uppercase F. So from flags, we import flags. Once this flags is imported, we want to create a constructor. I will save this in a variable called app and the constructor like this. This is all we need to do to start using this. It's saved in something we call app, and we're going to be using this app to do other stuff. We have looked at decorators in part 2, and we use the route decorator to bind the function to a URL. If we want to display an index page, we want to have a function, maybe we'll call the function index, and we want that function to be run anytime anybody hits that endpoint or that URL. Since our constructor is a variable called app, so we'll start at app dot the route decorator that we'll put here, and in a pair of parentheses here and quoted, we want to put the URL that we want to bind the function to. We want to the home page, and we'll just put a /. So anybody who comes to the home page of this app, this function will run. So let's say we want to run a function called def index, right? And we want to just print out a message to the page. Let's say return hello world. When we run this file, we want our web page to just display hello world on the index page, because the route that we have defined here is a / which indicates the landing page or the home page. When we look at how URL are designed, let's go to the browser. When you do facebook.com, for instance, or let's use another place, and let's say school.mildredgroup.com. This is the name of the site. We put a /, it just means go to the home page. Okay? If I put something like /fees, it will give you the fees breakdown page that does not exist because there's no extension. I'm using the extension. And put the extension, it goes there. Now, because we have this /fees, if we come here, we want to put the same thing here as the route decorator, the URL for the route decorator. Fees it is. So go to the other page. You can disable using extension, but we don't use extensions here when we use Flask. Okay? So when you do /this, so when you go to the address /this, if you don't put anything here, you're going to the home page like this. So we know how URL is constructed and how to write the URL here. So we want this to go to the home page. When we want to run a file as a script, we use this code. If name is equal to main, we want to do something. For us to run a Flask file, we want to use app.run. And if we want it to always reload every time we make a change, we use debug equal to true. Normally, this will run by default on port 5000. If port 5000 is blocked, you can specify a port, put in port is equal to whatever port you want to run this on. Let's say I want to run mine on 8181, for instance. This is the port I want to specify. If I don't want a port, I can leave it to run on a default port, whatever. But my port is in use, so I'll specify a port, let's say 8080. Any port you want to use here. So every time I run this file, we should go to a home page, a web page. It will give us an address for a web page, and it should display hello world on that page. So I'll run this. Everything is well, and it gives me the address. I'll copy this address. I'll go to my browser, and I'm going to paste this address here, and then I have hello world printed on the page. So we've created an app already. And we have our web page, we have our web address. Does anyone have any question for now? Does everyone understand?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we've seen the concept of, let's do something else. Let's say we want to put an about page, and we'll say def about, and we want to return something like, we can even put an HTML tag here, h1, welcome to the trial page. So we do this, and I saved. When I go here and reload, and on this URL, I put /about. It will take me to welcome to the trial page. So you see how we build routes. So there are more complex way of building routes, passing variables. We're going to look deeper at passing variables later down the line. I don't think I have that in your pre-recorded videos, so I'm going to show you in a live class. But this is basically what it is. And in order not to get you confused, I'll let you digest this first before we go more complex. Now, when we have a Flask project like this, when we're using Flask as our framework, now I'll tell you the reason I hate frameworks, and I do not build any app with frameworks myself. But most of the time, you work on teams, they want you to know one framework. Companies want you to know a framework. They don't even test you using a framework. They test you using raw code. We waste a lot of time learning the framework rather than the language. But if you're not comfortable with the language, it's best to use a framework so you don't have messy codes and you don't reinvent the wheel. It's easier to work with teams like that because not everybody have the depth of knowledge of the language. And with frameworks, you already have things that have been done, that have been tested thoroughly by people. You can just reuse them. But then your creativity is limited by the boundaries of the framework. So the reason we start with the language and the basics of the raw language before we begin to use frameworks. Then you understand the framework better when you understand the language, and then you can do more things. Flask is chosen because it's more flexible and allows you to do whatever you want within Flask. We're not using other frameworks because they are more restrictive and not as lightweight. All right. So for Flask, we need to have our directory structure. When we want to serve HTML files or static files like CSS and JavaScript, they need to be placed in specific folders with specific names. It's easier to place them in specific folders with specific names that Flask looks for this. By default, you need to have in your directory a folder named template with the same capitalization, plural like this, template. It must be named templates. In the templates folder, you put all files that have .html extension. That is the only place Flask will look for your template. You also need to have a folder in the root also, and this folder must be named static. This is the place where it will look for CSS and JavaScript files. If you put these things outside these files, it is not going to find them by default. Outside these folders, sorry. It won't find them by default. So all CSS and JavaScript you want to put in the static folder, all HTML in the templates folder. Then you can create as many folders as possible. The directory structure of Flask is not so complex. It's initially confusing, but we'll still look deeper at that. We have our app file at the root of the project, and we're going to have other Python files later on. Maybe files that processes other things, and maybe we want to put them in a different folder. Let's say, for instance, we want to create database files, the models. We want to put this in a folder we call models. You can name this anything you want. There is no fixed name for this, but I just named them models, and I'll put other files here. Or you want to have other pages too. You can have another folder called pages. But the most important one for you to take note is you must have a static folder and a templates folder. So let's look at templates. Jinja2 templating engine is what we use, and it makes it easy for you to have a base file that you inherit from when you create other pages. We have the index page, about page. We're not going to write HTML code in a return statement like this. We're going to render a template. When we want to use Jinja template like this, and for the purpose of those of you that did not take the course 1, front-end development with HTML5, CSS3, and JavaScript, I'm going to create a new file here, and I'm going to name this base.html, and I'm going to show you what the basic structure is. If you have watched last week's lesson, for those of you in batch A, you would have seen the prerequisite videos for introduction to HTML and CSS, and for those of you coming from course 1, this will be straightforward. So let's look at the basic structure of HTML5 documents. We have the doc type declaration, which we write bang doc type HTML. Now, this declaration is just for the browsers to know that what you are passing is HTML5, and so different browsers will be able to interpret it the same way. Then we have the tag HTML within HTML and a close tag. So this is the basic tags that your file will have, or HTML document will have. You start with a doc type declaration, and then it is between the start an end HTML tag that all the code for the HTML will come in. We say we have two parts. We have the head part, and we'll close head, and then we have the body part. So everything we display on the web page comes within the body. Everything that's a metadata not displayed on the web page comes in the head area. We use blocks for us to create this base template, to have placeholders for things that change across pages. Let's say in the head area, we have something we call the title. And when you put title like this, it's just that thing that appears in the browser window. Okay, for instance, when I come here, you will see this browser window here. We have just the address of the page in the browser window. We want to change this to be a nice written something like just about written here. Then we put that between the start and end title tag here. Now, on every page, this title will change. So for you to change these things, you want to use something we call blocks. Because this is the base template, we want these templates to be inherited by other files. For us to do this, to have placeholders where people can put whatever they want within blocks, we put something we call, let's say, here, I will. Now, there are many ways to do this, but I will do it this way. We write blocks using this and %sign. So open curly brace, %sign, the block, close %, close curly brace. I like to name my blocks. I'll just call it block head so that I can end block head. So I will do this, %, and I will say end, and I'm going to end block head. Now I can just do this on one line here. So what happens here is this is the placeholder. The page that inherits this will know to put in anything they want in this head area. Now, if there is something that I want to be applied to all of the files that inherit from this base template, I can put it here. Now for the title tag, I want to put block title like this, because the title will change across different pages. So they will inherit from this and get the title. Now for the style sheet, I also want to put the link here if it's a common style sheet, or I can put a block placeholder here for the style sheet, so we can add style sheets as we want. Okay, so the whole concept here is for you to be able to put blocks. So let me say I put a block style sheet, for instance. Let's do like this. So if you have style sheets specific to that file or that page, you can now add it here. So this is just like the inheritance that we look at in when we did classes. But now we are trying to do inheritance with HTML, where we need to have just one common file. And so when the style changes, we don't go to change the style on every page, but all we need to do is to change the style in one base, the link to the style on one base file, and we can have unique styles specified for each page while keeping common styles or things that are common to all files in one place. Things that are common like footer, we can also have a footer block and also have a footer code there too. Does everybody understand the whole concept of using blocks?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So when it comes to the body here, we can now put a block content. Let's say we can put a block for the body and a block for JavaScript. Anytime you put block, some people just write block without naming the block, but I like naming my block. I'll name this content. So the page content for that page is going to be unique to that page, and you are going to put that between this. If you want to have any JavaScript code that's specific to that page, it comes there. Okay, and if you have a footer also that is specific to that page, it can come there. Or you can put a footer that goes for all pages here. So we can just write that or let's just put a block footer, then we'll write code. So you see, I've used blocks for most things here. So like I said before, you just have to understand the concept and decide how it is you want to do yours. I'll put some meta tags here just to make this complete, and then I will create an index page that inherits from this for us to understand this better. So let's do the viewport for responsiveness. Let's put a page description. I'll put meta name is equal to description. Content is equal to, we'll put just any description, let's say main class project, or let's say class project. And then I have the link for the style sheet here. If you are using Font Awesome and all those things, you can actually, like let's say we downloaded Font Awesome here, you can actually put that there. Now when we use URL for this Jinja templating. Now this is something else I will show you later on when we are extracting data from the database. We use this double this to write expression like this. And so this here is like an expression. I use URL for is one of the methods that we use in Flask that helps us for better redirect if we want to be able to know where we are going to, what file location we're going to. And the CSS file we save is going to be in the static folder, and the file name, let's say in this static folder we created a CSS folder where we put our style sheet. So let's create a new folder we call CSS, and we'll create a folder we call JavaScript. So it's always going to be in the static folder, and the file name is going to be style.css. So let's create a new file. We call this style.css. So we're going to write styles here. So we want to make that style the common style across the app. Any question? Okay, so now we've done this. These are just basic stuff that we've put here. We are going to write more code on this, but this is for introduction, for us to know that we can put anything we want between blocks for placeholder for the main page. Now we have a base file. We want to have a file we call index.html, and we want this file to be rendered by this app instead of rendering hello world. When we run the index function, we want it to run the index template. When you have a base template you want to inherit from, we still write this 2%. We have the curly brace and the percent sign, no space between the curly brace and the percent sign, and you end percent curly brace, and then you put extend the name of the file you're extending in a pair of quotes, which is base.html. So your file can be any name. If this file was main.html, you put main.html here. Okay, so we extend this, and then we want to put extra description for this page. And recall that here we had the blockhead here, placeholder, for us to be able to add anything. So I'll copy this one and we'll come here and put blockhead here, because we had a placeholder there, which means we can put anything between the start and end of that block. And I'll put meta name is equal to description and content is equal to, let's say our class project is the STI data collection system. So let's just start with that one. Let's say STI data collection system. Here also on the base file, we have the block for title. So we can just take the block title and come here and we'll put title So let's just put that within the block head. So you see the way I did that there, we can actually change it from the base file and say on this base file, we have the start and end block head here for placeholder, and maybe we just put a title here, and then the block title that we just used there, we just use that to put in anything. But I had the block head, I put it between the head block. So you see how dynamic this can be and how yours might be different from mine as long as you understand the concept. We've done the head block. We've put the title that we want to put. You can actually put a block title here if you want. It's still correct. Let's say the %, and let's say block title, and then I'll close block title here. Anybody has a question? Okay. So we have the title within the title block, and we close the head block. On the base file here, we have the head block here. We can actually close the head block at the end if we want. Any way you do this, it's not going to give you an error. So let's just continue like this so I don't get you confused. Now let's do the content block. We have a block content here. There's a placeholder to put any page content that we want. And so here, between the start and end here, we're going to put the content that is specific to this page. So now you just see that we don't have to write the basic HTML code here. We need to write what is unique to this file. This base already has what is common to all files. We have the style sheet here that is going to apply, and so we don't need to do that. Let's just create a style here so we can test this. Let's say we want H1 style to be this. Or let's say color is equal to white, and we have a background color of black. So let's just do this for our H1. Then we'll use this to test that that is working. So we have that style sheet added here, and so we don't need to add it here. On this content block, let's just write something like I'll put like a div tag. Let's say div tag. So we'll start that later. Let's write any code we want to write here. I'll put H1. Okay. Okay, so we now have our index page. Now, the index page is inheriting from the base file. We have done our whatever is we want to add to the head block. We added. If we did need any of this, we would have just used the content only. Any question?
The paragraph ending is which one?
You said? Sorry, the paragraph ending. Okay, thank you. So we've done all of this, and what we want to do next is go to our app file. We do not want to run any code and say return this. Flask, we have something called render template that we're going to import also. And here we're going to return render template by returning index.html. Now, because this is in the templates folder, we don't need to bother about the directory, just the name of the file. When we come back to our web page and we reload, let's go back to the index page. We will have what we have specified, the style applied, the body of the page. So you see how we can now run our HTML using our Python. We just render template and it renders. So the function is going to return the HTML template, which is going to be our home page. Does everybody understand? Or should I go over it again?
Yeah.
I understand.
Yes, I understand.
All right. So you can do the same thing for other pages. You can have about a HTML and render template here. We can also pass values to this template, and then we use an expression to display the values that we pass. And we're going to look at that once we look at how to use databases. So in summary, what we have seen is how to install flags. We create a virtual environment, we activate the environment, we install flags within the environment. Every time we want to install any package, we must make sure we are within our environment and it is activated. Every time we want to come out of our environment, we can just deactivate the environment. Okay? Let's look at how to work with databases. And this, MySQL Alchemy that we want to use is an abstraction between the web application and the database. It is like an object relational mapper. It is an object relational mapper actually. And for us to start using SQL Alchemy, we must install it. And if we want to use any driver or any database API to connect to MySQL, we will install that driver or API also. So I chose to use SQL Alchemy because it's more a better ORM in my opinion, and we will use MySQL connector also with this SQL Alchemy. So to install again, we're going to use pip. Now for those of you who are going to graduate into course 3, which is advanced Python and production development, you will learn how to use Poetry to manage dependencies and how to create your environment files without having to put any sensitive information within your code, but they'll be in an environment file that resides on your system or on the server and is not pushed into any repository or any third party. So the idea between using an object relational mapper, or the idea behind using an object relational mapper, is to create a code representation of the database using classes and objects. Let's see this now. We will install SQL Alchemy, make sure that your environment is still activated, and we'll do pip install SQL Alchemy, SQL Alchemy. Sorry, I think I typed it wrongly. So we'll do pip install SQL Alchemy. I think it's correctly spelled. Pip install SQL Alchemy. So I'm having this cannot import version from pip or no location. Okay, I'm happy this even happened because this is one error a lot of you will see when you try it. So I've deactivated my environment and I will reactivate my environment and see if that doesn't stop it. I will now recreate my environment and start all over. One of the things that usually happens sometimes is getting errors without knowing the source, and trying to debug this error will take you weeks and it doesn't make sense. For me, I will reactivate this. It doesn't work, I will recreate my environment and I will reinstall the packages. So I will do .venv /bin/activate, and then I'll do pip install and I still have the same error. Okay. So let's do something. This is VENV here is my virtual environment, and it is not working now, so I want to delete it. When we use Poetry to manage dependencies in an advanced course, you don't have to start reinstalling pip install. You just use one command to reinstall all your dependencies for the project. Now we have removed this. I will close my terminal and I will reopen it. I don't have Flask installed anymore. I have deleted that. So I'll start all over. I'm going to create my virtual environment again. Python 3/m venv.venv. So I have it, I'll activate it. And it's activated. I will install Flask. Then I will install SQL Alchemy. And everything is fine. So in order not to frustrate yourself, it's just easy for you to do this. Just delete your virtual environment and reinstall your dependencies. Now, if you are developing on a professional level, you always have a dependency manager, and reinstalling dependencies will not be so much of a problem. Now we have done that, and I also want to install a driver that I want to use. And I said I was going to use MySQL. You can use anything you want. I'll say pip install, and I'll use MySQL, and everything is installed. Does anybody have any question? So do you understand it so far?
Can you hear me, ma'am?
Yes, please. You said?
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to add something. What if at the beginning I just decide to install both SQL Alchemy and all the stuff I'll need, instead of maybe trying to have an error and then going back?
Yes, you can install everything all at once. Now, one of the reasons that error might have happened is maybe because we updated the pip or something. Sometimes with programming, you can never know. This thing behaves like it has mood swings or mental problem. It works 1 minute, it doesn't work the other minute. You cannot know why it is not working. And to save yourself the stress, I've seen people break their head over 2 weeks trying to debug something that has no error, and only a restart of their computer just starts the whole thing back. So you can install everything from the beginning. It doesn't save you from this thing misbehaving when it wants to misbehave, but it's a better way to just know that you are done with all your installs. But now this is not the professional way of doing things. We're taking it step by step. And for those of you, some of you are from course 3 here. For those of you in the advanced Python course, you'll see that we do a different way of using dependency manager. And you just have one file that holds all your dependencies, and you use one command to run all of it to install them without having to bother your head about which dependency should I install. Pip install this, pip install that. You're not pip installing nothing. You just run one command and it installs everything on that file. Okay, and we're going to look at that. I might just show you that towards the end of the course, but yes, errors are bound to happen. Once you can trace the error, it is no programming error of yours. It's something that has to do with the system or something conflicting. If it's not in production and it doesn't destroy anything, it's just better to just reinstall things. Okay. So once we have installed SQL Alchemy, we want to try to connect to a database. Now, before we do that, let's just look at some of the different methods that we have. We have this method we call connect, like this. And this connect method is what will return a connection script within SQL Alchemy. we have something we call execute written like this, and this is what we use to execute an SQL statement. We have begin when we return a content manager that has a connection that uses transaction begin. So we saw transaction in part 1. So, and if a transaction is successful, it's committed, otherwise it is rollback. So when we use the begin, we have dispose, and when we use dispose, we dispose of the connection pool used by the engine. And then we have driver, and this holds the driver name of the dialect that is used by the engine. And then also we have transaction. So there are different methods that we have, and we're going to look at that now as we look at SQL Alchemy. So I want to edit this out file now to be able to connect to a database and to be able to send data to a database, retrieve data from a database. Since we have installed SQL Alchemy, we'll do from SQL Alchemy. From SQL Alchemy, we want to import. We're going to import some functions there. The create engine function, and we'll import text because I want to use this text to run SQL queries easier. We have to define a variable to make it easier for us, and we want this variable name to be called connection string, or whatever name you want. You can call it connection, whatever. I write connection string so that I'll know that this is what connects, this is what holds the name of the database plus the dialect it uses or the driver it uses, the username, we want the host, the username, the host, we want the port, we want the name of the database, and all of that. So we are going to specify it like this is equal to, in a pair of quotes. I'm going to be using MySQL. I'll just accept this. So I'm using the MySQL plus the driver I'm using, MySQL, then a colon, // I'm going to specify the name of the username is root, and root at localhost. I'm using the host is localhost for me, so I'll do root at localhost. If you have a password, you specify the password. If your database has a password, you specify the password. So root colon your password at the host, colon the port. We're using a default port of 3306, which is the default MySQL port. I don't need to specify it if I'm using default. You can specify it if you want. And then / the name of the database. Let's say I have a database called, let me start up my database here. I have a database called, let me create a new database. Let's use that. Let's say trial, and I will select. So I have a database called trial now. / the name of my database, trial. So this is my connection string. I made it short. The MySQL plus MySQL / the username. I don't have a password, so I don't specify, at localhost, which is the name of the host. Then you can put the port here. If you are not using the default port, you can put your port number here. I'm using MySQL default port of 3306 and / the name of the database. So this is the connection string. We'll test if this is correct. If not, we'll retrace our step. Then we want to create the engine. We use the create engine method, and in the parentheses we pass the connection string. Or you can just write this directly in there. Sometimes I like to separate them so that when things change, I will change it there. Or you can just put it directly here and not the name of a variable in quotes. Okay? So we'll pass the connection string there. Now we want to connect this. But I want to use Content Manager so that when I leave the block, it exits. We want to just try to create a table within that new database we call trial to see if the connection is established. So I'm going to use a content manager so I don't bother about closing connection. So let's say with engine.connect has connection, I want to say, let's do connection.execute. Create table if not exist. Let's say connection.execute. I'll use text just so that I can just run the SQL as text. In the parentheses here, I will say create table if not exist. I want to create a table called, let's say, patient, and I want the column definition now to be ID, should be an integer. Let's say name should be Bacha. Let me make this bigger. And age integer. So let's just do something this basic. We're not going to use this for anything. We just want to see if our connection is correct. But let's try to even insert into there. So say insert into patient, ID, name, age. That is the columns. I want to put values 1, John Doe 25. I want to see if I can create a database. If I can insert into the database, it now means all of this thing I have done here works correctly before we go advanced. Once it inserts, we want to print out something. Let's say for row in result, print row. Let's print. Let's select all from patient. We can do something like result instead. Let me just break it down in little pieces. Select all from patient, and I'll say from row in result, print row. Okay, so we'll display everything in the database, which is going to be John Doe 25. What we just did here is trying to connect to a database and printing out, inserting record into it and printing out what we have inserted. We've done that, and I'm going to remove this. Let's use this to run the file. We'll put it under this, and we're going to let's comment all of this out. We just want to test SQL connection. We just want to print this out to the page. Now, what I've done here is to import SQL Alchemy, create a connection string which will specify my database and all the database credentials to connect to. Create engine here. We're going to create the engine that we are going to be using, which is going to use this connection string in the parentheses of the create engine function that we imported from SQL Alchemy. And then I'm using the context manager here just because I don't want to open and close connection, so that when I exit the block, the connection closes. So I start with engine.connect, and we say that that's one of the methods of the SQL Alchemy that returns a connection object, and it has different methods. I mean, this is one of the functions. It has different method, execute method, which will execute an SQL statement. I use this text method here that I imported just to be able to write raw SQL code between this here. So let's run this and see if all is well. This is not running. So it's running now, and we can see this printed here, 1 John Doe 25. So we have this printed out, which means that it's inserted into the database. We have the value printed. Let's go to our page. This is the database we created, trial. I refresh, I have the new patient table created, and I have the data. Let's see. The data is not inserted here because I'll tell you why it did not insert. We did not commit this transaction. So when I do this here, let's say I'll write the commit connection. Let's say commit. Let's commit this. Sorry. If I use the begin statement at the top, so the reason why this is not inside in the database is that this is not committed. So let's commit. So run this again. I'll come back here, save this, go back to patient, and then see that it's inserted there. So while it is successful, we didn't commit that. It didn't go in the database, but it showed us that this is successful. Connection works. The data can be inserted into the database table, and all is well. So for us, since we know all is well now, we can now remove this code that we used to test, and we can now start doing this in creating models and routes. Does anybody have any questions? Is it understandable?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Okay. Okay, so now that we've done that, can we take 30 more minutes and describe how to create a model, or we want to do that next week for you to understand this first? Should we go on, or you want to get this video and digest this whole topic first before we go further, or you want to go further?
I think we should digest this whole topic.
Okay, you want to digest this first. Does everybody agree?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
We agree.
All right, so we'll meet next week, and we're going to look at how to create models in the models directory. And we are going to be working with our class project, which is going to be creating the app that we will use to collect data for STIs. We have the forms in the course resource for hepatitis B, syphilis, gonorrhea, and chlamydia. And we are going to use this to demonstrate how to create the flask app. And we're going to create a fully functional working software. All right, thank you everyone, and have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. Thank you.